Greetings, astronauts, and welcome back to Astro Candy. Hi, I'm Raven, your host, and I'm so excited to welcome therapist and holistic coach Karina Gutierrez to the show. Today, we're talking about sexual liberation and healing through BDSM. This is a spicier Astro Candy episode, but you know what? I figured that we're in Taurus season. Taurans love wealth, luxury, glamour, decadence, and they also are very sensual, very sexual. That can range from just indulging in a fine piece of dark chocolate to indulging in BDSM and sexual healing, sacred sexuality, liberation. Like, we are getting into it today on this episode of the Astro Candy Podcast. I'm so excited. Before I introduce you to Karina and tell you what we're going to be discussing on this episode, I want to say thank you if you've left a review. I was just on Spotify the other day because we curate Zodiac season playlists now. So follow us on Spotify at Astro Candy Podcast. And I saw that my show has a couple more ratings than it had. So if you have rated the show on Spotify or Apple, oh my God, I fucking love you so much, and I really appreciate it. If you have yet to rate it, just, really quick, just scroll through whatever app you're on and just hit 5 stars. It would mean the absolute most to me. So Karina is one of my really great friends, which we'll talk about how we met in Philadelphia and have remained friends ever since. But she's also an expert in both Western psychology and Eastern healing practices. So she kind of blends the two. She also holds 2 master's degrees from the University of Pennsylvania in professional counseling and counseling mental health services. She's also a certified yoga instructor, a certified strategic intervention life coach, and a certified Usui and Holy Fire Reiki master. So as we're talking about BDSM and sexual healing and liberation, just to know, Karina has the credentials to back this up. She brings a wealth of wisdom and knowledge to this conversation, and just her unique personal insight is unmatched. So in this episode, Karina talks about working with a tantric coach and a pro-dom. She hired a pro-dom in order to let go of sexual shame and repression and to experience sexual healing and liberation. This is a concept that I just had never heard of before, but she breaks it down wonderfully. She also discusses how our sexual partners can serve as a reflection of our own sexuality and show us the parts of ourselves that need to be healed and integrated. That was something I had never heard of before. But in hindsight, I was like, yeah, that makes so much sense when I go back through a lot of my relationships. We talk about using sexuality to fuel your creativity and honor your eros. And Karina discusses sexual repression and shame, where that stems from, and how it physically and emotionally manifests. And then we get into BDSM. She tells us what it is, more importantly, what it isn't, and the dynamics of domination and submission, both in the bedroom and out in the real world. I think that was the biggest takeaway in my conversation with Karina, was you can use the archetypes of domination and submission in your real life, in the real world, in a completely non-sexual way. And it can really transform you and change you and heal you. We talk about integrating those dom sub aspects into your life and how to find a healthy balance within yourself. Now, I've done a couple episodes about the chakras and how to balance them, but Karina shed light on how to open and clear the chakras through sacred sexuality, and more specifically, how our sacral chakra has an energetic tie to our sexual partners. So if you have ever felt like you just can't get rid of an ex, like energetically, is probably tied to your sacral chakra. We also discuss our experiences with conscious celibacy. Yes, at one point we both, not at the same time, but made the decision to be celibate. So we'll talk about that. And then we round out the conversation talking about kinks. What is kink and how you can start exploring yours, and some tangible next steps and resources in the show notes, which again, everything that we mention is linked in the show notes. I really think you're going to absolutely love this episode. And while the concept of BDSM and hiring a pro dom might be like, what the fuck? I think that you can take tidbits of this, the energetics of the archetypes of being a dominatrix or being a sub, and use that and integrate it into your life in order to take more control in some aspects and in order to surrender in some aspects. That's what this conversation is really about. It's so fucking good. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I do want to say that in a couple spots, very briefly, the topic of capital T trauma, especially sexual trauma, is mentioned. No details, but it is briefly mentioned. So just a quick trigger warning. And I will put in the show notes the timestamps of where that's mentioned if you want to skip over it. All right. Enjoy the conversation. Karina, welcome back to the Astro Candy podcast. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so good, Raven. Good to see you again.
It's very good to see you. It's so fun catching up, which we haven't done much of because I wanted to do it on the podcast. So we've both been through so much. Can we just take a minute and look back on
Oh,
time?
it's insane. We're completely different humans living in completely different places.
Living completely different lives. It's very fuzzy to me. I feel like my Philadelphia days are a blur, but that's where we met.
Didn't love that. Yeah, and we met for well, we met one day, and then months later, you finally moved to LA, and I go to LA, and we meet once, or I don't know, a few days. We've known each other more online than we've known each other in person, actually.
Yeah. But it's so weird that you say that because I feel like you're one of my best friends.
Same,
Truly.
same.
Yeah. I'm like, Karina, like I've known her forever, right? Like it must be our soul contract or something.
And we have deep ass conversations. So it doesn't matter whether we talk like once a year or not. But when we do talk, it's like it's deep and it's real. And that's why I love you.
So true. I didn't even think about it like that. Like, yeah, every time I am talking to you, I'm bearing my whole soul.
Yeah. That's how I like my friendships.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, well, we'll get to this, but when you were in LA visiting, we were both here. I think I like told you things I'd never told anybody before. And I was like, I don't know why I'm telling you all this, but you just have like one of those. Do you have Scorpio in your chart?
I'm a Scorpio. Yeah.
You're a
Definitely.
Scorpio. Okay, right. So that's like a staple Scorpio thing where you can just like share with them all your dirty secrets. And you guys keep secrets like
Mm.
a padlock. I don't know if that makes any sense in
Yeah.
analogy, but
No, it's like a padlock. It's true though. It's true. People just like unfold in front of me and tell me the craziest things. My Uber drivers even randomly. Yeah, it happens all the time actually. And I love it. And I think that's why I do what I do, right? Being a
yeah,
therapist. I love just hearing people and seeing them.
you're
Yeah.
definitely in the right space. So let's talk about when we did meet up in Los Angeles. You kind of caught us up. We were both living in LA, and Philly, and then we had met up a few times. I move. You decide to leave Philly as well, and you're kind of like maybe moving back to Miami at this time, but then you go to LA and we meet up and we're talking, and then you tell me why you're in LA. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So I flew out so I was, oh gosh, so much context here. I was seeing a coach for 3 months. His name was Yosef, and he was a tantric coach. And towards the end of our sessions, it just made sense to have an in-person BDSM session, which I can get into the whys of that and whatnot. But I essentially flew in to have that BDSM session with him and then also attend one of his conscious play parties. So that weekend or week, however long I was in LA, was solely dedicated to my sexual liberation and just letting go of all the shame and all the repressed energy that I had stored for so long. And yeah, that's why I was there, girl.
I remember you telling me that. And I think I have almost the same reaction now as I did then. I was like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah, I
tell
remember.
me everything. Like, what does this all mean? So let's back it up a little bit. You said he's a Tantra coach.
Tantric coach. Yeah. So he coaches through the lens of Tantra, a lot of Neo Tantra, a lot of sacred sexuality, and a lot of kink, like archetypes. For me specifically at the time, it was to learn how to surrender more. I was doing a lot of things in my life that I didn't love anymore. And he helped me to kind of just like let go of the reins a little bit and just trust life to flow in the next direction of where it wanted me to go. But I was just so controlling and
Mm.
hard for me to let go of certain variables in my life.
So connect the dots for me on this. You say you're controlling in your life and you're kind of like tired of the grip.
Mhm.
How does that equate to getting a tantric coach? How did we get
Oh
here? Please,
yeah.
like, connect the dots. Like, seriously, because it makes sense when you think about it. It's like, okay, yeah, you want to learn how to surrender. And like, when you talk about BDSM, that's part of it, like
Mhm.
submission. How did you decide this is what you wanted to do and take this approach?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so crazy because the one small thing, not small at all, actually. At the time, I thought it was small, but it was actually huge, was that in my relationship at the time, we weren't having sex. And it was actually a pretty sexually stifling relationship. A lot of, what's the word? A lot of shaming around sexuality. And so I started to feel dull. And that dullness sexually manifested everywhere else in my life. And as a coach, like I know that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. And so I hired a coach to help me specifically with my sexuality to help me like essentially turn on the flip of my life again,
Mm.
the light switch of like my eros, my life force, my sexuality, knowing that I didn't want to make my sexuality contingent upon my partner who wasn't showing up for me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to just do this for myself then. Little did I know that healing sexually was going to help me in every other aspect of my life. Like, I didn't think that it would make me a better person overall, if that makes sense. I thought I was just going in here to not be dull anymore. I just felt very flat.
Did you identify as a sexual person before that relationship where you had felt dull? Did you feel like you were very sexual and then this kind of stifled you and then you were confused?
Yeah, so definitely I was very sexual from maybe ages 16 to 21 when I started to become sexually active. And that was like really high sexuality. And then I started to hit a lot of like slut shaming and parents
Mm.
being not okay with sexuality and just like all of the messaging that comes with that. And that's when I started to become more repressed. And obviously from there I started to attract a lot of partners that were also repressed because I was vibrating at that
Ooh,
frequency. Yeah, so
okay.
then cue in a whole bunch of relationships where I essentially manifested the same situation of a man that would shame me, of a man that wasn't comfortable in his own sexuality because I wasn't comfortable in mine because I felt over sexualized in my past. So there was just a lot of like not clean energy within the
Wow.
way that I was operating in that world. Yeah.
There's so many layers that you would never even realize are so deeply intertwined because relationship and sex, they are intertwined. Usually when
Mhm.
you're in a relationship with someone, you are having sex with them and it's interesting how you say your relationship to sexuality attracted whatever it was at the time attracted certain partners with that
Mhm.
equal sexuality or maybe it was shining a light on an insecurity you had or maybe like and I think in the manifestation or spirituality space, we talk about that a lot, like attracts like. And I have
Yeah.
never, ever thought sexually
Oh,
like attracts like.
oh my God. Huge. Yeah. I'm glad you say that. And I hope that people really remember this because we can't go around pointing fingers at like, oh, I keep attracting not available partners. Like maybe you're not
Yeah.
available. Like it's all a mirror. It's all a mirror, which is why I hired Joseph because I knew it was a mirror.
Yeah. Mirror is a really good term to use. So when you were looking in that mirror, what did you find and what did you heal or how did you heal it?
Yeah. Oof. How did I heal that? Well, definitely acknowledging that I am a sexual being and that it is okay to have desires and it is okay to act on those desires in a safe way, in a consensual way, etc. And also acknowledging that sexuality, it really is an energy that lives inside of you, like your eros, your sexual energy is your life force energy. It is your creative energy. So you can actualize that through sexual acts, or you can actualize that through making art, through dancing, through singing, through like creating. Like it's so important to create. And I purposely took a sabbatical when I was feeling like that dullness, like I said. And it was in that I started to then, okay, let me channel this sexual energy. And I was also celibate at the time. So I wasn't necessarily using sex, but I was using art. So I started to create, I made this new account called Healing with Kink. And that was such a big outlet for me to start to just like create more art and like talk about sexuality more. And that was a way for me to honor my eros. So it's not like I think people get caught up in like sexuality healing needing to be through the avenue of sex, but that's just like one piece of like the massive umbrella to which you can tune into that. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And
Okay.
I'm happy that you explained it like that because, again, my misconception, even going into this, was thinking like healing sexually means being sexual, but it doesn't. Like it means being creative, being free to express yourself. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think if more people knew that, it would help heal their repression. You talk about feeling sexually repressed. Do you think most people feel this way?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how does that manifest? How does sexual repression show up for most people or for yourself or however you want to speak on it?
Yeah. Oh gosh. So I think a lot of it is subconscious, first of all. So I think a lot of people don't know that they're necessarily repressed. I want to start there. And then second of all, you can see it in the body. You can see the way that someone maybe is like hunched over or someone's just like super tight. Like there's not like an open aliveness to their being. So physically it manifests that way. But also emotionally and with communication, it manifests as someone not being able to speak their desires. Yes,
Mm.
sexually, but also like in a boardroom conference, can you speak your new project idea? Can you advocate for a raise? Can you tell your partner that you want them to do the dishes more? Like, do you know what your desires are? Most people don't. And so it's all just a microcosm of the macrocosm. Those are just a few examples of where I see it most.
Does this stem from a trauma usually, or just could it be as you're getting older and like experiencing your body and just like little things that you may internalize? You know, our baby brains do that a lot where it just blows something out of proportion. And then next thing you know, you're sexually repressed. Like, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like, how does it
Yeah.
come about?
Yeah, I do think that they're repeated things across time. Yes, capital T trauma, if you've experienced that, huge for sexual repression. And if you've never experienced capital T traumas, then lowercase t traumas that happen all the time. And a lot of people say,
Mhm.
like, oh, I didn't have sex ed. Like, yes, you had sex ed. Everyone had sex ed. And most of the time it was through media or through things that are not said or through things that are said via porn or via what your parents say when you had sex for the first time and they tried to call the cops. That was me. So, my
Wow.
mom.
Were they successful in dialing 911? And what did the operator say?
That would have been so funny. If you have sex one more time, I'm going to call the cops. But as an example, that messaging sent me into a spiral of like, oh my God, sex is so bad. I cannot express
Mm,
my desires. So, yeah.
yeah. Well, I can only speak from my own experience. I grew up in the church. There is a lot of, yeah, you get it. In the church, sexuality, like that is a no-no. Like you wait until you're married before you have sex. So I grew up really thinking that sex was this sacred, and I'm not saying it's not, but it's like it's a sacred thing just for your husband, and you are just to give yourself only to your husband. Like this programming is in a lot of young women because of their religious beliefs. That and I experienced capital T trauma, sexual trauma as a young child, and then in young adulthood in college. And that culmination, that is not a cocktail you want to drink. You know what I mean? Like that is so as you're kind of explaining some of the how it manifests, like as far as not speaking your needs, it is such an unsexual thing. Speaking your needs, asking for a raise, that's not sexual at all, but it's just very interesting how your sexual experiences or everything leading up can manifest in a very real life way.
Absolutely. And that's why this is so freaking important. And thank you for sharing your story. Also, the church, girl, how did I forget to say that?
Yeah.
The church is huge. The way that that's conditioned us to believe sex is this sinful thing, where in reality, sex is where we find God in many cases.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit more about you hiring a pro dom before we get into that experience. This stems from BDSM, right? A pro dom is in the BDSM arena. Can
Mhm.
you define for us what BDSM is, like just from a this is what it is textually, but then what it represents to you, whether that's sexually or spiritually?
Yeah. Ah, I love this question. So, yeah, BDSM. So, BDSM stands for, it's an acronym. It stands for bondage, discipline, domination, submission, sadomasochism. And so, BDSM is essentially the practice of, I mean, there's so many things that can go into it, but I think I want to start off with what it's not, because
Yes, I love this.
there's a huge
Please
misconception.
do.
Yeah. So, what BDSM is not is it is not torture. It is not anything that it happens without consent. And so, actually, psychologically, in the DSM, which is basically the Bible of all the mental health disorders, BDSM is in there when there's no consent. If there's no consent, so if you flog someone without consent, you're pathologically ill. If you consent, there's no pathology to it, and it's actually just a healthy thing, two adults playing. So I want to make that distinction. Bring it back to your question.
What it is and what it isn't. So that's what it's not. So what
Yeah.
is BDSM to you or like in your sexual healing journey or spiritual journey?
Yeah. So what it's been to me, I think is the best way to answer that is using the archetypes for it and bringing it outside of sexuality. So, for example, domination and submission have been the two biggest archetypes for me to play in that have been so healing. Domination, stepping into my archetype of a dominatrix. What is that? That's a woman who can speak her desires. That's a woman who knows what she wants and she actually goes out and gets it. She's a woman who leads her life, right? And that's what a dominatrix does. She leads her submissive. So that's one side. And then as for me going into my submissive archetype, uh, probably one of my favorites, honestly. But that's learning how to surrender more, learning how to trust my dom. In this case, it was Yosef who was my dom. But feeling in my body that someone held me and that someone had me and that someone was creating an experience for me, which we can talk to about like what the actual thing was like. But feeling that at an embodied level then helped me see outside how I can actually trust more. Because there's a very different experience between cognitively trusting and saying like, oh, I trust the universe, and like feeling in your body like, no, I really trust, like I really let go. There's a very big difference. And that's what submission actually taught me.
I love this. I was thinking, God, recently,
Tell me.
I've been thinking, I just need to take an exhale, like the type of exhale that's like fully relaxed, fully in that trust, that
Mm,
surrender, that like someone else has me. And I have felt very like manifesting in my body just feels very like tight. It feels very clenched for lack of better word. Like my jaw is tight, my jaw is clenched, my shoulders need to relax. Like I'm just like, I
mm,
just need to fucking relax. Like that's what I've been telling me. Is like, I just need to fucking relax. So while you're explaining how domination and submission works and then like how it can translate into your real life, I'm like, that's what I
mm,
need, especially a
mm,
submissive experience. Submitting to, surrendering
mm.
to, like surrender, fucking put that on my vision board this year.
Yeah.
Surrender is the biggest thing that I need to embody and to learn. And that's why you're here, Karina. You're going to tell us how to embody submission, how to embody domination. You touched on it as far as how it plays out in your life. Let's talk about first how it plays out in the bedroom, okay? And then how you specifically used your experience in a bedroom setting
Mm.
for your life. Do you mind getting into that?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so submission in the bedroom, and then how you can, yeah, okay. So submission in the bedroom. And preface all of this by saying you need to have a partner that you trust. If you do not trust your partner, if you don't feel safe with your partner, do not even try to go into the world of BDSM because your body's not going to feel safe and you're going to feel like a failure. Just want to make that clear. So once that's already there, the trust and the safety, submission is allowing your partner to take the lead. So that means that you're fully in your receptive mode. You're fully taking in. So sex is a dynamic of giving and taking. And sometimes the roles switch. right? It's not always that one person is dominant and one person is submissive. Most of the time, there's a switching energy. Most. In the cases of submission, you're fully just being receptive to the moment. You're fully being receptive to your breath, to the orgasm wave, the way that it goes up and the way that it goes down. And you're not seeking to control. You're actually seeking to relax, so much so that the energy kind of just like moves through you and things just manifest for you, right? I'm already going into the second part of this, which is out of the bedroom, which is when you're so receptive that things just come to you and you're not really doing, but things are happening for you because of who you're being, not because of what you're doing.
Oh my God. Let's just
Yeah.
sit with that for a second. What you
Mhm.
just said was so fucking good. Okay. Go on.
Yeah, I felt that in my bones too. And I know that state so well now in my body when I'm there and when I'm not, and I'm still human, so I'm not always there. But when I am there, I'm like, oh fuck, this feels good. Like it feels so good to be receptive, especially as a woman. Like I love to receive sometimes and not have to lift a finger.
Yeah. The modernization of the woman has changed quite a bit. And growing up, or my conditioning, or whatever you want to call it, the expectation, societal, whatever, was, women are equal to men and we are out here hustling and grinding. And that was fun until it wasn't. You know what I mean? Like, I would like to relax. I would like to kick back. I would like to receive more and not, like you said, not lift a finger. I just crave that sometimes.
Yeah, I've also, I've had to learn to bring it back to the bedroom thing is that if you want to be in a submissive state, you have to have a partner that desires to be in a dominant state.
Mm.
You can't force the domination out, the dominatrix or the dom out of someone. And so I think that's, I tried to do that many times, like force someone to be a dom that just wasn't a dom. And then I would, yeah, kind of like hate myself for not being able to access submission. But it's just because there wasn't that polarity to bring the me into that, you know?
Do you think that's because some people are just like, can't submit to submission, if you know what I mean? Like some people are just, what am I trying to say? You mentioned there's a polarity and it's kind of a dance. Like in a relationship, in a partnership, sometimes someone's more dominant, submissive, and then the roles switch.
Mhm.
Is that the healthy dynamic? Or is the juxtaposition of someone always submitting and someone always being dominant the healthy dynamic? Or isn't there one?
Yeah, the word healthy, I think, is subjective to what works because I've known couples that are in a full-time dominant submissive relationship that would never work for me. That just would never work. But for some people it does. And so I think it comes down to preference. Yeah, to the point of being healthy or not also, I think it's important for someone in themselves to have a dominant side and a submissive side. I do not think it's healthy for someone to only know their dominatrix or their dom. I don't think it's healthy for someone to know only their submissive side because you need to have the perspective of the other in order to have full empathy, in order to hold space for the other. A good dom is a good sub, and a good sub can also be a good dom. They know the other side. I think that's really important to note.
So explain a little bit about the dom side of things in the bedroom and then how that translates into out in the real world.
Right. Okay, we didn't get to that. Okay, so a good dom in the bedroom takes charge. They take lead. They don't vacillate. If they're going to pull your hair, they're going to pull your hair. They're not going to be like, oh, is it okay if I kind of just like one strand at a time? Like there's a deliberate action, there's an intent and then action, and it's quick. There's no waiting, right? You kind of just like go on impulse. And at the same time, an intricacy here is that a good dom is actually submissive to the divine. So they're channeling something higher than them that works through them. And you can channel, that's up to the dom, but you can channel the divine mother. You can channel Kali, goddess Kali. You can channel God. You can channel the universe. Like there's something that you're channeling as a good dom.
Huh,
Now,
I had no idea.
yeah. It's actually so fascinating. The first dom session I had where I was a dom, you just like, well, you have to be so receptive to what's coming through to know what to do next to your sub.
Mm,
It really is an interesting
very
archetype.
intricate and
Yeah,
energetic.
it is. It is energetic and it's so magical and it's so fun. But outside of the bedroom, it kind of like the same thing. Outside of the bedroom, I'll speak for myself as bringing out my dominatrix outside of the bedroom is speaking my desires, leading with confidence, pulling my shoulders back, my chin up, and like walking through the world as like I am Karina, not like I'm a small version of Karina. I'm like a shy girl. I'm a good girl.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very different energy. But as a dominatrix, how does she show up? And that automatically changes everything about my being when I bring in my dominatrix archetype into the world. Girl, I think that if every woman could like tune in to their dominatrix archetype, we'd have such powerful women that don't play in this good girl archetype because the good girl archetype is fucking up polarity.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is a web that I am deeply caught in,
The good
Like,
girl.
yeah, the whole good girl thing. It is a tough breakthrough. Okay, so I
Mm,
had some questions, some follow-ups, if you will. Can one be overactive? Say, for example, I think I already kind of admitted this about myself. I'm a little more overactive as a dom in real life.
mm,
I have a lot of Capricorn in my chart. So it's just like the work hard CEO bitch, like tell people what to do, boss them around. Like I have been told like I'm bossy and
mm,
I'm just like, "Ah, fuck." So I have found because of this that I tend to lean more submissive when it comes to bedroom,
mm-hmm.
because I've been fucking over here telling people what to do all
Yeah.
damn day.
Oh, poor
Body,
princess.
just tell me what to do. Okay. But seriously, so if one I feel is overactive, obviously like there's ways to comp that, but how do you achieve a balance? I think we would all feel just freer, more open if we could achieve a balance. So how do you remedy that?
Oh God, yeah. Well, if you're not hiring let's say, well, if you're not hiring a dominatrix to do this and to access submission, then yeah, of course, there's ways that we can access like our own internal submission, um, through other ways. But I mean, the answer isn't going to surprise you, right? It's like it's making time to decompress your nervous system because if you're
Mm,
hyperactive and hyper controlling throughout the day, you really want to bring your nervous system back into a parasympathetic state. And so what does that mean? That means going and maybe taking a bath, maybe taking a hike and making it a regular practice. There's another thing also that I love doing. I'll make it so, like, let's say on Saturday, I'll make a schedule for Sunday, like itinerary style, like 10:30 a.m. this, and then 11 this, and then 12 this. And I schedule the entire day, and then I show up for Sunday, and I allow myself to flow within that schedule. So the dominatrix side of me on Saturday created the schedule, and then the
mm,
submissive side of me on Sunday gets to show up and be like, oh, wow, amazing. And I schedule everything. I'll schedule what I want to eat, what music I'm going to play at this time, what journaling prompt I'm going to do at this time, where I'm going to walk, how much time I'm going to spend there. And that is a really helpful practice as a solo practice. Again, we're speaking of things that don't involve hiring someone.
okay. I love that. I love that alternative, especially for people listening who are like, okay, I'm not really ready to hire a Dom.
Exactly. Most people are not.
But let's talk about you hiring a pro dom and your personal experience with it and how you move in the world now because of it.
Yeah. Well, so there's this pretty significant negotiation process beforehand where my Dom sent out a form and then I would write down everything that I want to experience, everything I don't want to experience. And then we go over that form. He asks me, okay, what does this mean to you? What does this mean to you? Like it is in depth. I felt very like taken care of with that. And then we actually show up to the session, what's called a scene, and we go through the entire scene. I'll skip the details of that. But after the scene, then we go into aftercare and kind of like wrap up the session. But to answer the essence of like what I got out of that is feeling in my body that I was held and feeling in my body that
Mm.
someone was taking care of me and that I didn't have to lift a finger. I didn't have to do anything. And that I was finally owning my sexual desires, that I was finally saying like, hey, I want to experience this. And then also for context, I did not have sex with my dom. A lot of people were asking me that it wasn't inherently sexual. There was impact play, which I was interested in experiencing, which is like flogging and was it flogging, electroplay, some bondage, things that I wanted to experience that weren't for me anyway, it didn't feel like super sexual. And it's weird to say because I say it out loud and someone's like, how is that not sexual? But it didn't feel that way. It just felt like I was owning a desire that I wanted to experience these things. It felt really important for me to do it.
I love
Yeah.
that. It feels so integrated. Like it feels like you've like taken the stigma or taboo out of sex and really integrated it into like energetics
Yeah.
and into your life. I feel like that is, I don't know, it might be like the fountain of youth or something. You know, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that might be the key. I have
Uh,
this really weird question.
Tell me.
Can the universe dom you? Could we play out this whole BDSM scenario with God, with source, with the universe, and ask to submit to the universe and have the universe be our dom?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's definitely a practice I was doing after the session. And I think that that process is mainly mental, emotional, spiritual. It's not physical, right?
Yeah.
The universe isn't physically doming you. So I think and I think the physical piece is so fucking important because we're human and we have these human bodies. So we need to experience it in this level. If we're not bringing it into your actual physical body, then you're not fully experiencing this energy of submission that you desire. And that's my opinion. That's quite controversial, but I believe that to be true.
It is true because I've tried to fool myself. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've tried to be like, I'm surrendering.
Right, right.
And then I'm like, where is it? Like, where is it at? Do I need to check in? Like, what do I need to do? I am like, I've pretty much exhausted this, but I am in such a headhunter, is what I like to call myself. Like, I'm such a headhunter in life, in work, especially. And I'm just like, the idea of surrendering really appeals to me because I'm tired of running towards something. I want it to just come to me. And this is the energetic in all of life. Like, this really beautifully ties into manifestation. The whole idea of like BDSM and submission and domination. It's just like if you are constantly chasing something, it cannot come to you. That is just what it is. And so we have to practice, which I feel like stillness is submission almost.
Yeah.
It's surrender is submission, and then things can come to you. I think that's the easier way to manifest. That's how your manifestation comes when you're in surrender. You just might not realize it. It's when you're completely like for me, it's the point where I'm so exhausted, I'm so depleted of running, of chasing, of trying. And then I just like get into this like, well, then I give up. And then and then
And then it works.
and then it works. And I'm like, okay, how can I have a healthier relationship with
Yeah.
the universe instead of like killing myself for something and then like being so depressed and exhausted by it? You know what I mean? Like, how do we just make this a little less excruciating?
What a difficult question you pose me.
What? What do you mean?
It's so, I mean, I think it's the human, I think it's the human dilemma, right? Of always seeking to obtain something. And I think, I mean, we're kind of wired for it though, because our prefrontal cortex, our thinking part of the brain is like always seeking for something and always seeking to improve, which is good for our human evolution because we're meant to evolve. But it's at our detriment when it's time to just simply sit and, like you said, be still and receive. And I think the key to manifestation is getting out of your way. Because ultimately, the universe only knows the word yes, right? The universe just wants to give to us. Who gets in the way? Us. And our scarcity mindset. And then we're like, it's not here fast enough. But what if not being here fast enough is just because we're not operating at the flow pace of the universe? You know what? Someone said this recently. They said, I operate at the pace of love. And I thought that was so beautiful. What if we just operated at the pace of love?
I would need to open my heart chakra first.
We can do that. Yeah. You know what? I think, dude, definitely during my BDSM session, I felt my heart chakra open in ways that I've never felt before. It was like vibrating.
I do want to touch on this though, because you mentioned it when you were talking about topics. And since we're talking about chakras, opening, you mentioned opening and clearing the chakras through sacred sexuality. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah. So chakras, we have many, but there's seven that are the primary ones. And as I was saying before, like the way we do one thing is the way we do everything. So if we have one chakra that's like not functioning right, it impacts all of the other ones. So our sacral is our sex center. And if that one is filled with thoughts about sex is bad and I'm not a sexual being, I can't be because then I would be a bad girl and the church is going to come after me, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then it gets clogged. And then energy can't flow from the root all the way up towards that sacral and then up towards the solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, crown. And so I've noticed that, and I say this having done Reiki on hundreds of people, there's so much that's stored in the root and the sacral with women specifically. So much. And so healing through sexuality ultimately unlocks those first two that then allows energy to start to flow up more freely. Most women have their heart, throat, third eye, and crown relatively open because those are the most feminine aspects, right? More intuitive, more like connected to the ethers. The ones down below are the ones that are more charged with a lot of baggage.
Can baggage be energy or stagnant energy from previous relationships
Absolutely. I love how you said
of
that
the
like
sexual nature?
yes, yes. Yes, we store. Yeah. Well, because when we connect sexually, our energy channels flow in and out of each other. So if we're not actively disconnecting post-sex and post-relationship and clearing that person away from our field, they are going to stay stuck in there.
That's so validating because I have heard people say like being connected energetically through the heart chakra with an ex relationship. And I'm like, I swear to God, my sacral chakra, like that shit is so close to my womb. I've felt that before and I thought I was crazy. And so I'm so
Mm.
happy that you pointed that out because obviously this whole conversation about BDSM is so empowering. This sexual healing is empowering. It's all very empowering and everyone can do what they want with their bodies, but I just want to make known that energy is energy. Swapping energy is swapping energy. When you're having sex with someone, it's an energy swap. Okay?
Mhm.
Like you're getting some of them and they're getting some of you. And so I'm just saying that from my own experiences, I have learned to shield myself a little bit better, be a little more
Mm.
discerning when it comes to when I'm going to share that energy. Yeah, and you mentioned this and I don't know if we ever had this conversation, but you mentioned your celibacy.
Yeah, yeah. It was for that same purpose, wanting to be a lot more discerning with who I allow into my energy field. Oh my God. When I started to like just feel how much we take in from someone when we have sex with them, I was like, oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, I did a celibate shtick. I don't know if I ever told you that. Did I tell you
You
that?
did. But a long 2 years?
How long was it?
Yeah, yeah.
2 years.
Oh my.
Yeah.
How was that? What'd you learn?
I learned.
What? Did you not learn?
No, it's just that's such a therapist question to ask. And it's so fitting. You know, I've actually considered doing a podcast episode on celibacy itself, celibacy and like singleness and like
Mm.
really being truly alone. I think we can tend to busy ourselves with other
Mhm.
people. And anyway, what did I
Mm.
learn? How sacred my body, my energy is
Mm.
and how I really don't, how I have more jurisdiction over it than I ever gave myself credit for. Like, again, this goes back to the capital T trauma as a young girl and then also in college. I feel like I finally had claim over
Oh,
myself now that I was able to like choose what I was going to do, or in this case, not do with my body, you know?
oh, wow. Girl, that's so beautiful.
Oh my God, thank you.
Powerful. Yeah, that's so powerful.
It's been quite the journey, Karina.
Yeah, but you're doing the fucking work. Oh, wow. I love that you did that. I love that you took back your power. Not enough people do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you don't sit with yourself, I mean, I was really in a place, especially post that breakup, where I was just like, I was not relying on anything outside of myself to like fill the void. So it
Oh,
was
whoa.
really just me and me and me and like
Wow.
God, obviously. But you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like it was just like, I gotta fill up my own cup.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I did. Yeah. Okay. I know we're coming up on time a little bit, so I want to get into one more topic of discussion before we leave,
Alrighty.
and that is kink.
What is kink? Well, so kink is basically the bigger umbrella term to which BDSM stems out of. So kink is just
Mm,
a non-norm. And what can we define as the norm? We can define it as a heterosexual relationship where a man and woman have sex for procreation during solely missionary, where the man is solely on top, no kissing, no passion. I don't know, just like think of like the most like normative.
basic. Yeah.
Yeah. Kink is anything that deviates from that. And that's why kink can be quite subjective because for some people, it's kinky to do oral. For some people, it's kinky to lick feet. And for some people, it's like, that's the norm. What do you mean? So kink is quite subjective.
You mentioned that it can help, kink exploration can help heal repressed sexuality. How does one start? How do you decide what to explore?
Yeah, I think it's so important for people to do a checklist or a test, which I can send you and you can put in your show notes because you don't know what you don't know. And I think people like you need to have a list of things, like you need a buffet in front of you to be able to decide like, oh, what you like and what you don't like. And I think it's important for people to also try those things. So maybe let's say latex, that's a kink. And you've never tried wearing latex before, but you're intrigued. And then you try it out with your partner. And then you realize you don't like it. And that's okay. Set it aside. Try something else. But when people don't try things, they end up getting stifled. And what does stifling do? It
Mm.
just contracts energy. That's why kink exploration is basically spiritual exploration, because it's just allowing yourself to try different things.
I really love that so much. I've always been very exploratory, I
Mm.
think. Like I'll try anything once. I'll eat anything at
Mm.
least once. You know what I mean? Like I'm just one of those people who, well, I did not mean that in a sexual context, by the way.
I didn't either. I was thinking of like
Okay.
you're eating crickets or I don't know.
Yeah. I really will. Like I'll try anything. So that's where I feel like kink is exciting. So you mentioned though that
Mm.
you have a checklist. So are you saying like here's a one sheet of all the different kinks, go through and see what maybe piques your interest and then try some? Is that what you mean?
Ish, kind of. There's a test online where you answer on a scale of 1 to 10 something that you would be potentially interested in. And then at the end, it gives you a percentage of different archetypes, not archetypes, behaviors that you might be into, like voyeurism, exhibitionism, age play, domination, submission, shibari, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, that is so fun. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
Give me
great.
the link and I'll put it in the show notes.
It's great. It's a good test. And I take it somewhat regularly and I'll see that it shifts. So your interests will shift. I think it's important for people to know that we're fluid beings. We might like something on a Tuesday and then on Thursday we don't want it.
Hey, that's just like my appetite too. You know, like
Right?
some days you're craving chicken, next it's steak. I don't know.
Exactly. I love how you say that you're also explorative, though. It's important.
Yeah, I don't know. I love it. I might be the Aquarius in me, like very innovative, future driven. Like, what are the possibilities? Like, I am very much like that in all of my life, I think. So
Mm, that's why we're friends.
I have to say thank you for
Mm,
rejoining the podcast. She's been on before. I will link that episode in
mm.
the show notes, but this was just mwah, chef's kiss. So good. Thank you for answering all of my nitty gritty questions and being so open to. I think a lot of these topics can be taboo, or, you know, maybe you identify with the sexual repression and it's just like, I could never even think about exploring that. I hope that this interview, if you've listened to it this far, that you are like, you know, there's nothing to be ashamed about. And it's my life, it's my body. I can try what I want, I can do what I want. So, yeah, thank you for lending knowledge to this conversation and this topic.
Thank you. Thank you for providing the space. And I hope that we can have more conversations around this and that the people listening go out and then talk to their friends about it. And soon we'll all be liberated.
That conversation to me was just like a sigh of relief. Something about talking about these once taboo topics really just makes me feel liberated. I mean, I hope you do too, after having listened to the episode and really hearing about the energetic dynamics of BDSM and how you can heal sexually without being sexual, and how you can harness your sexual energy for your creativity. I mean, there's so many words of wisdom within that episode. I might even have to go back and listen to it again. I want to say thank you to Karina again for being on the Astro Candy podcast and for being so open and willing and honest, sharing her story and her wisdom and insight and just all of the amazing things. If you want to learn more from Karina, if you want to keep up with Karina, I've linked all of her socials, website, podcast in the show notes so you can connect with her there. And thank you for listening to this episode with an open mind, an open heart. Thank you for just being willing to hear another perspective. I think since the conception of Astro Candy, it's changed quite a bit, but what is true for me now in my life and as I do this show is just providing a safe space to explore. Explore yourself, explore the universe, explore topics like BDSM. So I really appreciate that. I know this one was like a little more left field, but it was kind of fun, right? Should we do more of these? Let me know. DM me at Astro Candy Podcast. And again, I would just so freaking love and appreciate it if you would take a second and just rate this podcast 5 stars on Apple or Spotify or just wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, I will see you next week, astronauts. Bye.